All right, you ready? Five, four, three. You said what?
And I was like, I should have found a pretty filter.
It's fine. I feel like, I don't know what Pharaoh should have going on, and the beard is doing what it wants to do. Anywho, all
That's
right,
you.
five, four. What'd you say?
I said, that's you.
Five, four, three, two. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Just put the juice in the tacky. For tuning in to the Jaguar Noir. Once again, don't know if we're going to call it show, podcast, whatever it may be. This is your host, Nomad. So this show, I actually wanted to do something a little different per se. So I'll go into the young lady that you see in front of me for a quick minute by the name of Miss D. So Miss D and I worked together some years ago. We worked in different boroughs, but there were times where we would kind of, have like mutual meetings where we would all meet in a certain borough, which was in between us. And um, I felt like putting the boroughs out there. I guess it's fine. So Ms. D worked initially in the Bronx, and I worked in a Brooklyn location, and we would sometimes have meetings in the Manhattan location. So that's where a lot of the times we were able to kind of come together and merge. And then what ended up happening was someone I think had left the Brooklyn site, and Ms. D came into the Brooklyn site. So at that point in time, we were able to kind of, get to know one another a little better. One thing I can say is this person is very consistent to who I first met them. Not so much met them to be, but from the time that I first met them to, I would say, to this present date, they were known, by many for like just, being a little although we, worked in like a nice sexual like health sort of a facility, I would say sex positivity, Ms. D, I think, along with a couple of others, really kind of excelled at. But I think Ms. D sex positivity was a little bit of an upper echelon in comparison to other people. Because Ms. D, there was also, just a different community that Ms. D, participated in that others, didn't know about, had little idea of, so on and so forth. So fast forward, Ms. D ended up inviting me into this space of hers. And I'll say, I've attended, a few different events over, I guess, the last couple of years. But nonetheless, I actually kind of sometimes like for people to do like their own bio and things like that, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of things. But myself being nomad, I just want to give a individual round of applause. There's a fake studio behind me where everybody is cheering and yeah. And I want to thank Ms. D for taking the time to make this conversation happen. So Ms. D, if you want to introduce yourself to the people, however you want to, please feel free to.
Well, like you said, I'm Miss D. Born in Brooklyn, currently live in Philadelphia. Um, that's all I got for right now. Like, I don't got a long introduction. I'm Miss D, Brooklyn woman.
That's fine. That's fine. So, I would say upon, first meeting Miss D, once again, I don't even know how we got into like I said, and I think it's because we worked in like sexual health, sexual reproductive health, but sexual health. I think where, when we were just in that environment amongst many people, many things were just not off limits. And that's one thing I will say I'm respectful about when it comes to that space. When I've gone to other spaces, working with others, it's like, yeah, you can't talk about that. That's HR, like,
Mhm.
so on and so forth. But within that space, we had free liberty to do so. Once again, I don't recall when was the first time I got invited. Well, no, I remember the first time I got invited to an event. I just don't remember, how you introduced what you were into to me. But nonetheless,
I was going to ask the question too, because you said
sure.
you knew that. I was like, how'd you know? Like, how did that happen?
How did I know what?
How did you know? You said I knew you was into kink, and I was like, well, what did you know? What did
I
you know?
feel like it was probably something that was I don't even want to say spoken about. I think it was, I'll keep holding up this little apple juice, being tacky. I think it was something that was, I don't know if it was like a dialogue from one coworker to another. I don't, I'm trying to think. I honestly, I think, so I'll say this. Okay. You had invited me to a couple of events. One thing, and we're gonna get into this whole thing, everybody. I'm just gonna, I'm just segueing it in.
I'm trying to
Um,
figure it out.
right. But you you had invited me to something. You had invited me to an event. First of all, I want to go back and apologize because you had invited me to something in 2020, and I didn't realize you had invited me. And I won't go into too much detail, but it was someone's potluck, somebody that's significant to you. And it was in 2020. And I just went, and I was like, oh gosh, like I just went back and I saw the link. You usually I try to attend things that people have. And I was like, oh, that's my fault for not even coming. So hopefully the potluck was tasty and a success and a wonderful event. But apart from that, I think Ms. D, and I think my schedules, they kept sort of colliding and clashing at, I think at some point where it was like, one was available, the other one wasn't available, so on and so forth. Even today, I was ready on time. Then I had technical issues. I came back. Ms. D was here. Ms. D had to wait about 30 minutes for me to get technical issues together.
Okay, shit.
They in progress. We're working on it. But nonetheless, you had invited me to an event. You had actually invited me to a karaoke event. And with the karaoke event, I remember it was in Manhattan, and I ended up going. And it's so funny because one of the people who was hosting the event, when I rolled up to the venue,
Mhm.
he was actually outside on the phone, but I didn't know. I was, paying no attention. So I ended up going into the event space. I think when I was trying to call you, I don't think you were answering at that point in time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go in and see what happens. And I went alone. So I got in there and, it's about maybe six people. I made seven, I want to say. And, I sit down. I remember prior to getting there, the rule for karaoke was if you come for karaoke, you have to sing one song. So I'm just like, damn it, I don't know these people. I know nothing about just, I'm not gonna say uncomfortable, but it's like, I don't know these people. And then you want me to sing. We don't have vocals. There's an poster in my background. We don't have Usher vocals. We don't have, anybody, Jaheim, anybody's vocal. So I'm just like, fuck. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a team sport. So I noticed at one point I'm looking around the room and I'm usually solo dolo. So I'm by myself and it's, couples. So I see like a man and a woman over here, a man and a woman over here, a man and a woman over here. So I'm like, okay, whatever, pay no attention to it. The guy who was hosting it, at one point kind of had his girl, he told his girl to kind of sit closer to me. We were having a conversation. I can't remember what, but I told her that Ms. D had invited me. So, she's sitting closer to me. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is some sort of like, sex thing that's going on. Like, I think he's trying to, use her to make me comfortable. Oh, they want to, it's going to be a threesome. It's going to be, or, my brain is just going in all these places, and once again, the pressure of having to pick a song. So anyhow, I attend the event. I do my karaoke. I think I did more than one song. I ended up going for Halo by Beyonce. And I think I went for Halo because with Halo, um, Beyonce in the beginning sings baritone. Another girl had walked in, this Latin girl with a little Sailor Moon costume on or whatever. She's looking at me and I'm looking at her like attractive girl, but I'm just like, I'm not picking up on her vibe. There's a look of lust, but I'm like, I don't know, this, just a virgin to all this. So and I think she had said, well, why did you pick Halo? And I was like, oh, because Beyonce sings deep. She was like, no, it gets high. And I was like, it gets high. And I thought about the song and I was like, oh, like the whole hook. So anyhow, do Halo. We're there, we're vibing. Miss D still doesn't show up. The host says to me, hey, what you can do. He was like, we're having a party after this. And he's like, I think he said it's BDSM. And I think he might have asked me what, if I knew what BDSM was. And I was like, I think so. I'm not too sure. So he was like, well, yeah, we're having a party, tonight after this. You got to wear all black. So I'm like, I don't have all black. Like, and he's like, nah, you got all black. You find all black and you come to the party. And I'm like, I'll come. And he's like, kind of like, you know, almost like pimping me, I'm not pimping me, but like boss talking me, who I'm talking about. So you know the vibe. You know what I'm talking about when I'm speaking on this? uh Black Jesus, isn't that his
Okay,
name?
yes.
Right.
Okay.
Rapunzel. Rapunzel in a good way. But nonetheless, so he's telling me like, make sure you come, yada yada. So I ended up going back home, finding something that's all black, putting something together, going to the event in Brooklyn. It was a nice space. When I first got there, I think the person I hate to be giving out names, but I think his name was Hood Boy. Fit
Mhm.
guy, and I'm like, oh, this is, this kind of, fit, but like in like, sexy, I guess, kink wear, if you want to call it, boy shorts or something like that, in shape or whatever. I come in and it's just all these like black people in this space, and black different shapes, genders, I'm assuming orientations, but it's definitely like a great vibe, unity, so on and so forth. I'll get back into that, but I feel like I'm just rambling. So anyhow, being as though, I found out that it was BDSM, like an event that I was kind of going to and I was on board and, that sort of a thing. What got you into BDSM? Because you got me into it. So what got you into it?
um, being married, I feel like being queer, you're a little bit more kinky than other folks. Like you're willing to just try things that's outside of the norm. So being as a queer woman, it's like, two women, what do we do to have sex? We can do whatever we want. Like,
Mm,
so, you always adding some new things in. So when I was married, my wife at the time introduced me to like BDSM and kink. And it was
mm,
just, playing around, being experimental on another level. And this was, I think, 2008 or so. And she was like, I think you're a masochist. And I'm like, well, what's that? Go to the internet.
right.
So I found out about this. There was an event like the sticks and stones may break my bones, but whips and chains excite me. And I was like, oh, I want to go to that. It was all the way in Jersey. And I was like, back then, Jersey's kind of far. We travel the country now, but I'm like,
Right,
Jersey, all right, let's go
right.
to Jersey and see what's going on over there. And I met this dominatrix, and she had this big afro on, and then she had the submissive on this man on the floor, and I was like, oh shit. So everybody's so enamored by this woman because like she just is radiant, and I want to talk to the man on the floor. I'm like, you sure you want to be here? Like blink twice and let me know.
Safe word.
Like, why do you want to do
Right.
this? So I had just so many questions. So I got his number, and then me and him kept in communication, just random questions I would have, and like different books I would want to read. Um, I was in ministry at the time, so I didn't know that maybe the things we're doing we're supposed to be
Mm,
doing. I still follow my own rules, so I was married, and we stopped doing those things for a long time. And later on, when we decided to open up the marriage, it was um, mutual decision in a way. And it was like, so you want a girlfriend? What do I get?
mm,
I was like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, shit, I don't know. I thought, this was going to be my life. You're monogamous. And
mm,
I'm not a person who ever ascribed to monogamy. So that this was just new. Like, once you get married, this is what you're supposed to do.
mm,
Um, so she was like, well, what do you want? And I was like, remember that BDSM stuff? I think I want to go figure that out again.
mm,
So she got to go do what she was doing, and then I went and I started going to different places. The first place I actually went to explore on the outside of the internet, was
mm,
the Harlem Black Munch. And whereas a lot of people talk about BDSM being all white, I came into it heavily into black spaces. So it was all black people where I was at. So I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. All right.
mm.
Um, and the people were so welcoming. And like I'm still friends with some of the folks today who they wanted to make sure I was safe. They're like, "Oh, you going to an event?" So mind you, a munch is just a place for people who are into kink, BDSM, and things like that to come together to learn, because you're doing some crazy stuff. So you want to know somebody on a human level. So you're meeting in a bar maybe or a restaurant. So this is where we were, like in a restaurant. And I was going to a play party. So they were like, oh, who's the person throwing the party? And I'm like, so now they're asking the other person, oh, you know this person, oh, give us your number, make sure you're safe, we're gonna call. And I'm like, these people, I just met them this day, just let them know that I'm newly into this world, like outside of the internet.
Mm,
And they were like, I want to make sure you're safe. And that was just like, oh wow, people actually care about you. And making friends as an adult is kind of is weird. It's harder than,
mm.
oh, you like double dutch, I like double dutch, let's go, we're best friends now. uh, but in the kink world, it's like that. Like, oh, we have this thing that connects us and it's brought together people. Like, I probably would have never met some of these folks, like some politicians, some lawyers, some McDonald's workers, but we're all in this one space and enjoying the same thing. So that's how I started. And I was about 2017. And I worked at the location where we worked together in 2018. So that was like right.
Mm.
Was that's like
Fresh.
yeah.
Fresh piece. No, so when you say, um, okay, so for people who don't know, what is BDSM and like what does that mean if you can?
Well, like when you think about kink is just like anything that's outside of the norm, that
Okay.
outside of the other things that we like to do. So with BDSM, it is kink, but it's a little more structured. It has some element of like power exchange to it. So when you say bondage and discipline, sadomasochism, so somebody who has control and somebody who is giving up their control within the scene or within a dynamic. So it's just a little bit more structured kink. Whereas kink doesn't have to have that element of power control within it.
Gotcha. So there's kink, and kink can be many of things, but BDSM just happens to be like underneath
Correct.
kink. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. All
Umbrella
right.
term, then BDSM was like a more structured form of it.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Now, were you a person who like I get okay within it your role is more submissive or the dominant or does it vary by person or
It
you don't
does
have to
vary
say
by
if you have
person for me, but for
okay.
me personally, um I came in wanting or thought I was more submissive. Um, because that part interests me. It's like give up your control.
Hmm.
In me as being in ministry and Christian, like being that whole surrendering. And I was like, well, maybe if I can learn how to surrender in this area, it will help me in my walk with Christ. So that was my whole avenue. Because I'm like, I have trouble
From the
surrendering.
bedroom to the church. But,
Listen, everybody got their,
all right, different path,
thing.
whatever works.
But yeah, it's not for me. I learned, but then like I also understood like not just the submission part of like but people could bottom. Like you don't have to be a dom or submissive. You could just be a top or bottom. People could just want to enjoy the activity, and you have that power exchange while you're in that role. Um, and that was fun. It was like, okay, I understand why people do this. I understand why I was doing it. It's fun. I'm an adrenaline seeking junkie. Like I just like to do things. It's like, okay, get your body out, get yourself out of your body. And then when you're bottoming, you're feeling, the endorphins running, the oxytocin. So like you're getting this rush, this high, but I never could understand why people wanted to hit someone else. Like I understand being on the receiving end of things, like because you get all these things from it, similar
Sure,
to
sure.
any other kind of sensations. But then when I actually did it, I had such a high. Like I was like, I'm gonna go home, have a glass of wine after this session. But I felt so high, I wanted to sit and bask in that feeling. And I was like, whatever this is, I just need to just sit, let's write, let's journal. Like it felt so good. I didn't want to taint it with any other substance.
Mm,
Like, oh, I was addicted. So that was like,
gotcha.
I'm more of the top part.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. And I think people often will, when they hear these things, they feel like once again they paint a picture. So even with you stating like dominant and submissive, people I think they just think, whips and chains, excitement, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of a thing. However, even when you think about like two people and one person's kissing and it's to me that's receiving it, that's more so
Mm-hmm.
the submissive where you're open to I guess letting like you said said feelings and emotions and all that good stuff just kind of run through. And those there's some I was having a conversation with somebody last night and we were talking about, I think we were talking about like oral sex or something, and just talking about how some people are just more so givers, giver. It was a it was a joke I made where this girl I used to work with had said, it's always the, little dick, that wanna, that wanna eat shit, that wanna eat you all night, So we laughed about it, and they were like, well, there are some that just love to like just give,
Mhm.
or whatever it may be. And I'm like, to
Right.
me, that's where I guess that's where the dominant, kind of comes into play. So I only say that to say I think some people actually may have these things in them and they don't even realize it, or that they're participating in one of these roles, but because they have like this, this distorted image or this limited image of what it means, they kind of feel like, no, I don't do that, when it's like, yeah, you do that,
A
you
lot of
know
people do it, but you also don't have to be like the act itself isn't being a dominant. Like that's part of your character, who you are, but you can be a dominating in a role in the scene in a sexual act. But it doesn't mean that you are a role as a dominant. And I think some people get that confused because even a dominant could be the one on the receiving end. So you can have the role in your relationship as the dominant person, but you are maybe you're receiving that night. So does that take away from your dominance? No, but you're bottom. So one is the act of what you're doing, and then one is your role within the dynamic of the relationship.
and they're interchangeable. It doesn't mean
Right.
that
Exactly.
okay.
Somebody can definitely be a top, but be a bottom completely submissive. I'm submissive, my personality, I yield my control to my dominant, but in the bedroom, I'm the one giving, or in the scene, I'm the one who's yielding the tools. But it doesn't mean that like I'm not, because the person you can be a dominant and tell the person I'm telling you to whip me. Now, just because I'm the one receiving,
Right,
who's in
right,
control, you
right.
won't know who's in control unless you're in that relationship or know what's going on. So just
Gotcha.
because who's doing what doesn't necessarily mean who's in control in the relationship.
Okay. And it's so funny too. And as I said it, it did click in my head. Sometimes I can be a little stupid and delayed, but it clicked in my head where I'm like, and I might have just lost it. Dang it. No, but that happens too. My attention span is so short. But it clicked in my head in terms of like, how you said where it's, although I'm submissive, let's just say, I'm allowing you to do this to me. So there's power that I
Yes,
have, that
absolutely.
I'm, and I think that's something to kind of make clear, I think for
Right.
people more so as well. Okay,
Because people
gotcha.
feel like the submissive, the slave, the person who's the bottom, or just because they're yielding control, like they're giving their control. Remember, it's their control to have and to do what they want with it. So
Right, right.
they have all the power and all the controls, not like they're a doormat. They go into these relationships highly, negotiated it. I'm telling you what I'm willing to give up and what I'm keeping for myself.
Right. Gotcha. And the funny thing too, like you said, with being welcomed in, I think because I think I went to more than one, but I think I can't remember the first one. They even had like food there. I don't think I ate. I think it was like the host, and I think I met the host at one of your other events, Sunflower or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, she's
Right,
in
right.
Florida now.
Oh, okay. All right, Florida. But even with meeting them, and I think, they welcomed and offered me, I think, to kind of get something to eat. I just kind of felt like I don't know what's gonna happen. Let me not do it. I didn't know where the night was taking me, but I did remember just being like, I just want to kind of watch and learn and kind of take, all this in, if that makes any sense. I'm one of those people where, for the most part, if I haven't done it, I ain't gonna say I'm gonna try everything, but it's like it doesn't hurt to learn, certain things or whatever. And like, once again, the people were very, I felt, they were cool. I remember there was one person that the first time I went that I kind of hung with the whole night, and she was actually a dominatrix, and she black woman, full figure, curvy.
Mhm.
I forget where she was from, like Long Island or something like that. I can't. She even gave me a card. I don't know what that card is. 'Cause I think she did another business like with like beauty, like
Okay.
health hair care or something like that. But anyhow, I remember even sitting with her, and she was kind of educating me, and she was like, one of the things that, one of the disadvantages, I guess some would say, with her being like a black dominatrix within this community, was many of the men that I guess sometimes attended these events that they wouldn't, I guess, more so kind of submit to her. They wouldn't take on like that hood boy role. So she was like, if you look around, you see a lot of these, men, they're getting the women to submit, but the there aren't many men that are allowing this. And I remember she was like, would you like for me? And I would, I'm like, well, I'm not, I'm not, I'm, I'm just
Like, ma'am.
right, right. That's my pearls. Like,
Right.
ooh,
I came to watch.
that's level 10. Right. Be ready, just take your shirt. I'm ready, arms out, spank it, but I ended up just being like, no, maybe, but I'm right now I'm just watching. And it's so funny too, because I remember going to Black Jesus, he had told me the day before that they actually had the swingers party. And I was like, damn it, I would have loved to have. You know what I'm saying? But I was like, but this is cool. This is something I've never done, but the people, once again, very accommodating, very, very, very cool. Sometimes when I go to places, sometimes you come across an asshole. And don't get me wrong, it probably was assholes in there, but I just kind of felt like
Mhm.
based on the vibe and the aesthetic, it's almost like it so wasn't, about that night. Especially with just being around a bunch of, yeah, like I said, POCs, people of color. Great vibes. Um, oh, I thought something clicked on my end. I'm sorry.
It did.
Something did? It did, right?
Mhm.
Oh. Ah.
You talking about assholes. So.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, okay. Uh, you can text me too, because I don't know if this might show up. Hopefully it will. I don't think it will though. But I will be yeah, yeah, gotcha. So anywho, so like I said, you invited me to different events. One of the last events that you invited me to, now I had heard of the name of the male side. Because some, as we speak of assholes, there was an asshole that I used to work with at another job who was
Mhm.
actually an Onyx member. And I kind of felt like y'all just let anybody in, you know what I'm saying? But that's just
Don't
because of
say
that
that. No,
person.
we don't.
Well,
If
based
to
on
see
that
you. So
person,
listen,
that
how
person, they paid a good fee. I don't know, but nonetheless, but you were
happened.
the, I guess, the counterpart or the whether you call it brother or sister, I don't know, to that, I guess sister.
Hmm.
And you were it was a you were a pearl or you are a
Yeah, the
pearl,
Onyx Pros, yes.
Onyx
It
pearls.
was a
Okay,
sister
what?
organization
I'm
similar
sorry.
to Onyx Men have been around with now for 30 years. And Onyx Pearls 20 years after. I mean 20 years as well. But from even the Onyx Men Pearls, the Onyx Men, from them originating, the original pearls were there before. So they helped start and create the men's chapter. And the Onyx was created because Kink historically has been white male centered. And it was for Black men to know that, we have other people who are here with you. So when you see an Onyx man there, that you know that you are welcomed here. And there's more of us. So they created that, the women, to protect the men. Because a lot of times, the women were allowed in these spaces as because they fetishize Black women.
Mm,
So they were able to get in these spaces, make a name for themselves, and then open a door for the men to come in. But then they were like, all right, so now we need something too. Like the men got their thing going on. So what about us?
okay,
But
gotcha,
the whole
gotcha.
purpose is like to educate and empower like Black people within our lifestyles.
Okay. And when you're educating, what does that look like when you say to educate? I mean, I was educated, but it happens differently for, a bunch of people. What does that mean to educate?
Right, just basically on safety principles. Consent is huge. Consent is one of my things. Like I got in off of consent because it's just like it's a different way of thinking about consent, and I feel like everybody should think about it this way. Um, but also safety. Your history. Why are you doing this? Learn the different kinks. How to play. You can't just give somebody a fire wand and be like, "All right, here you go." Somebody have some chains in the basement. Like, let's go. At least you can, even if you are in the bottom position, top position, no matter what, like how to recognize if somebody's being unsafe or safe. Um, So even as interpersonal relationships, how to deal with community conflict. So you're learning, soft and hard skills, like how to hold a whip, but also how to communicate and talk to your person next to you, or even how to deal with white people in this world that we're dealing with. Like, because they're always going to try to test you, or say you don't belong here.
So that has happened when I guess people have gone into like because one would think going into a space such as this that there would be an open, come on, one freak, and freak in a good way, one freak,
Such a freak flag fly. But not, I think
eh,
sometimes that's where people get the misconception of safety. Like, this is still the world. Like, this is the same
mm,
United States that everybody lives in. Because people do have a clearer definition of consent. People are more like on vetting. I think they let their guard down and feel like everyone is safe because they're in this community.
mm.
And then thinking that way, people get hurt. Um, you're doing higher risk. I would vet or take higher precautions. But I understand, like, I was young before and just wanted to see things. But the more you know, it's like you really need to make sure you know the people around you.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Basically, I guess it's a matter of, you know, I guess one would assume being in this environment, everybody's kind of on the same wavelength. We're here to have a good time. We're here to be respectful, so on and so forth. But I guess at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like you said, we're still human. I don't know what this person's thinking mentally. I don't know where they're at. We can watch the news, and there are a lot of people, next door neighbors. Hey,
I
Marsha,
never
every
know
morning.
though.
Right. And then king, 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 a different kind of king, king, with the night, I ain't into that, um, you know, but so I guess I get that. I guess, one or I was under the impression that maybe because we are, like if we're attending this, like it's a little bit of, oh, I can really be chill here. But I guess similar, just because we're in a bar and we are drinking doesn't mean I can put my drink down and go, this is how I can't do that. You still hold your drink, put your little whatever over it. So I get that. Makes
But
sense.
even
And
think about, like, when a person goes into a sorority or something like that, and like they're all here for sisterhood, and then
mm,
there's them three that came here for something totally different. They
mm,
came in here maybe
mm,
to get some boys or just to
mm,
get ahead, and I needed some cheat sheets off for people so I could pass my
mm.
grades. So
Right,
everybody
right,
maybe
right,
have a
right.
different motive, and because you're here for sisterhood or you're here for
Sure.
to do some kind of work. Everybody's not here for the same thing. And sometimes, like,
Right.
you get so happy and you like you finally found a place to be yourself, like you let a little bit of
Sure.
parts down.
So when that happens, because I know you said vetting, and when you said a vetting process, that's more so outside of looking in. Is that where I'm trying to make sure that I'm like safe enough, like that that I'm coming into this as a, I guess a willing part, that you're not just letting some perverted freak like, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna come in and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Right. Because
like,
back in
go
the
ahead.
day, like, it was, more the clubs were underground. You didn't have the internet where you can just have the club right there in the address. So you had to
Mm,
know who's who. So there are still parties like that, but there are the ones that are more open. So more likely anyone is there to come. So now if I have a party at my house that's with my community, I'm gonna know who everybody's there. So even if
sure.
someone comes, I know who brought you. And then even if I get now, so now I want to have a party that's a small party, and maybe everybody's not gonna be my best friend, but now I need to know what parties you went to before. I
Mm,
need you to give me two references so I know if something fuck up, I know who else to go to in your community to let them know. Um,
gotcha.
what kind of events you went to now. Maybe if you went to
Sure.
these events that have no kind of guidelines or rules, maybe I need to talk to you a little bit more.
Mm,
Maybe you'll think
gotcha.
that this kind of party is similar to those. And
Okay.
the rise of swing parties, and they're making merging like kink and swing together. They have different consent cultures and different consent rules. So people may be okay and abide to the rules in one area, but they are disrespecting the culture in another area. So it's not that you don't belong, but maybe I need to give you some more education before you come into this space.
So explain that last piece to me because I think what people would think too is, as we're being educated, um, because and I'm just going to say this loosely, you can clean it up for me, but, because I got loose and buck wild here, I can do the same thing, but you're basically stating no, just, that may have been the space for
Mm-hmm.
that, where they allowed that. But here, because we do something different, although like, there's a commonality here, it doesn't mean that, it's like a twin thing, like we have
Right.
some things in common, but not everything. You know what I'm saying? So, okay.
But there's some places where, like, I went to a bar and it was a predominantly gay man's bar. And I was just watching, I saw some people, they just go up and they grab and was like, that was their hello. And it was like, oh, you just touched, or so they have their back turned and they go and, touch their genitals. And it was like, oh, okay, hi. And I was like, now, if you was in another BDSM bar, you would have been banned. But
mm,
in this space, because I even asked about it, I was like, this is a little different. I haven't seen this before because this is a new space to me. This is
sure.
my culture, so I'm just
Right, right,
observing.
right, right,
But
right.
it was strange. I said there was a lot of touchy when people didn't know what was happening. And they was like, no,
Mm,
just assume when we walk into this space, everything is okay. You're allowed to touch. Now you can say no, and people have to respect your no once you say that. But it is assumed
right.
that it's okay to touch you first.
Gotcha. Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't know that. Like I would have like it would have been nice to know that before I walked in there. Like I didn't wasn't disrespected or no one touched me. But
Sure.
watching it, it was like, okay, this is different. As in certain
Right.
states, you do something like that, you would get banned. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Now, do you think, with you being in that space, like you being a female and it being in a space, like you said, with mostly gay men, that they probably wouldn't have done that? I mean, you can't assume that,
Right,
but
maybe I wasn't there. He wasn't looking for me.
hey, he ain't had the parts they wanted. All right now. I don't want no fish diet with that
Yeah,
meat.
they just had too much next to the snack table, and I'm not a.
Mm,
I was like, wait, he ain't saying the time. I'm
carnivore.
like, well, well, that's how they like it. Little spicy cheese balls. I don't know.
Ooh, little seasoning, a little stank.
I didn't eat anything that night, but I got a little notebook. I was like, okay, and that's what happens here.
Some people say put your foot in it. Some people say put your, they say things are seasoned better with meat, like greens.
Seasoning.
Um, so I think that that's great too, that you spoke on um banning being something that can happen. And also, having people that can kind of, speak for you. Cause I remember when I went, like I said, even with the karaoke, how'd you, it wasn't like, who sent you, it was like, who sent you, it was like oh, how'd you hear about it? And I just kind of threw your name out there, and they were like, oh, okay. And even going to the other place with throwing it, out there as well, kind of, I guess saved me. Luckily, I think you weren't. Your reputation wasn't too tarnished there because I would hate to be like, "Oh, Miss D sent me," with an attitude and people beating
You
me
can't
up.
come,
And
you know her. You
yeah,
can't come in
right,
here.
right, right. No, I meant Miss B. You ain't let me finish. Not D. I said B. BD. You know. But yeah, luckily, that didn't happen. But it definitely is important, and I think for people too that could actually make them, feel safe. And like you spoke on too, consent being key is such a like strong and a vital piece because just because we're in this space, even if I'm like a voyeur and I'm watching, or even if I'm an exhibitionist and I'm doing the act, it doesn't mean that anybody can kind of come up to me and just, do or touch whatever, because that could definitely, I guess set off the vibes. I'm assuming though, in those spaces, and granted, anything can happen anywhere, but I would hope if you're somewhere and somebody does touch and you're like, hey, like that it's respected and not like, what you mean? You're in here, I'm assuming that it's like, okay, I'm sorry, or, I don't know, that sort of a thing. I remember even having, I'm sorry, you gonna say something? I was gonna say, I remember even having to fill out, I think like an application, or something like that, where you
Mhm.
were asked, it asked, I don't remember. I would love to know what that paper is
What the
too.
tennis
Sometimes I
means to
hoard things.
you or something like that, or how do you
Yeah,
feel things?
very much, very much, and like some other questions as well. I forget them off the top, but definitely a very beneficial piece, I would say. Um, let's see. And like you stated, to a good portion of this, you already kind of stated, but like there's different people from all different walks of life. Like I said, even the other person who participated, they had another business outside of this,
Mm.
different, clientele that, I think that that's more so a great thing as well, because I think when people think of this community, they think of, maybe tons of tattoos, tons of piercings, all black leather,
No.
everything that they talk about, it's nasty. What would you like to drink? Oh, I want some, cum colored, and it's like, well, they don't, they,
And then in reality, you have tons of teachers and tons of social workers, tons of lawyers. I think there's a lot of nurses and people in
mm,
helping professions. I feel like there's a lot of people in kink that are into social services or helping or want to make a better world, period.
mm.
Um, and that was, I don't know, I think that was strange. And then it's like, all right. So people who are a little bit more open-minded.
Gotcha, gotcha. And I think that's great too, because what I don't want people to think is just because you work in a certain service or something like that, that you are, I don't want people to think like, oh, this is my nurse, but the way they looking at me, they probably one of them people that attend them parties, and and it's so not
I
that. It's
mean, they
just,
want to be very consensual, like, and just like anybody else. Believe me, if they looking at you, oh well, they're not thinking that they want to tie you up, and if
mm.
they ain't going to do it wwithout consent.
Right, 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 right. Have you been to like any of the like all white or mostly white spaces, or have all your experiences been okay? And
Yes, I've been places where I've been the only black person in there.
okay, and what was that like? I'm just curious.
Um, the same as most of the places, like I find people who I connect with. Um,
Hmm.
like I grew up in Brooklyn for the most part, so it's like I've been around black folks, but I remember being in school as the only black kid. It's just like you find your people, you stay away from the folks who, um, you know who the folks to stay away from. Either the ones
Hmm.
who they don't want to be around you, or the ones who are overly friendly. It's like
Hmm.
trying to find me a black best friend. Come here, or oh, you so exotic looking. Saying no, I'm not. Like stop.
Hmm.
To fetishize you, so you stay away from them. And then sometimes you have to go to a place that's like, no, this place just isn't for me. and,
Hmm.
and it's okay to be like, I'm not gonna go back here.
Okay. Oh, so you still stayed, but give it a shot,
No,
and
some
you're
places
like,
that I can be there for a little bit, and it's like, yeah, this is a little too Trump for me. Let me get out of here. This
all
ain't
right.
fucking white folk.
Mm.
uh,
I hear you. I hear you. Um, do you find, I guess, with educating it, with Black people being more, or people of color being in this, um, that are there a lot that are into it? Are there a lot that require tons of education? Are there a lot that, come for the wrong reasons? Just based on,
I think, but people come for enjoyment. People come to because they want to make themselves feel good. Or it makes them feel happy. Are people in things for the wrong reasons? Absolutely. Like this would be a perfect place for an abuser to hide. Um, but such as other cultures like church, like a heavily orthodox religions, very into patriarchy. Those are perfect places for abusers to hide, such as
Mhm.
BDSM. Like if you're already a narcissist or an abuser, um, to get, is it going to look very much different from a DS depending on who's looking?
Mm,
So yeah, there's places for bad people to hide and to do things that could go unnoticed. But this is why people need to educate themselves, and it's not just about like what it is, but to look for those things as well and educate yourself about you. Like, why am I here? Some people maybe want to use it for their therapy. Like, kink can be therapeutic, but it is not a replacement for therapy. So, like, make sure you have a therapist. If you are into self-harm and things like that, maybe like, oh, I could come to Kink and get someone to beat my ass. No, you need a therapist. You need to figure out and what's going on that you need to self-harm. But can it be
Gotcha.
a replacement? Can it be helpful in those situations? Possibly, yeah. So some
Right.
people could use it for that in a therapeutic way, but it is not therapy.
So it's almost like it's levels to it, meaning like you said, if you want a little pop, because I like it, that's fine. But like you said, if you're pop, 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 it's like, whoa, like this, and I don't want to use the word normal, but this is not okay, or this is not, safe, healthy, maybe something like that. And it's like, granted, we're taking care of the physical, but I guess the importance is also taking care of the mental,
Right.
and I guess the
People
emotional.
very mentally fucked up. Like the mind is like people who are into mind fucks and mind play and interrogation play. Like you can really damage a person without even ever touching them. So even the person maybe they should know themselves. What is your limits? Like, what's your trauma look like? People in kink should be trauma informed because what does a person who has a trauma history look like that wants to come into a dynamic? You're thinking everything is okay, but they're yesing you. I have no limits. I want to do anything you want me to do. And now you do something and you break them mentally where they cannot come back. So like there's a lot of people who are into kink, but they're not into like the physical part. They're like they really into the mental aspect of it. And that can be just as dangerous or even more dangerous.
And and when we speak of kink, did I cut you off?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, it's a rude habit. My mother taught me better. But when you speak of kink, I think people often think of two. There are so many different things that can take place. So I think I remember there was this porn star, and I hate saying porn star because I feel like everybody is
Adult
not
film
a
actress.
star. There you go. Everybody's not a star, but a well-known Latino man. And I remember it was this black woman that he would be with, and it would just be like, he would just spit on her, and she would like lick the toilet. And I was like, that's definitely like, like his kink, like, ugh, and I'm like, there's a community, that loves it. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, even though I just did, but I think when people think of like kink, that they think of like that level, but it doesn't have to be that level. So I think like some of the things that I experienced or that I saw, one, the choke out subspace, whatever. Is that what it's called? Subspace?
Well, subspace is just an altered space that people go into. You don't have to choke someone to get into it. It could just be from high intensity, and it just gets you into an altered space, altered reality for the moment. So
Gotcha.
different than choking. You can just have subspace from some way somebody's talking to you, like a deep scene, really be in love. Just that ultra state of euphoria.
Gotcha. So that was one thing that I think I did see. I think another one was like science class. It was like a little electric rod sort of a thing, and just gently touching the skin. Of course, the little whips thing. Recently the skin stapling, sort of a thing, and people, liking that. I'm trying to think what else I saw. I
About something sensual, like some people just like sensual touch and like sensual massages.
I did see that. I saw one where, the person was in a chair, and I think maybe both arms are out. And I think they
Mhm.
might have been, because at that point, like you said, that is touch, and it because you can't do anything. So it's ooh la la. I did see, the massage table as well. There are many, I feel like there are so many things that I have seen. And what I do love about all these, even the different events that I've attended. I remember I think the last one that I attended at that space in Brooklyn, there was another person there too who was like, I'm just here to, I'm just here to dance for y'all. That's it. It definitely was like, like I'm just, a patron on the wall. I'm just absorbing all this. I'm looking, I'm learning. I don't know anything about this. I am here for support, but I'm being a good sport, and I'm learning, a thing or two as well. I think
Mhm.
that's another great thing about this is that, with mingling, you can, just find another person who may be on the same wavelength or a similar one, and you all
Mhm.
can kind of vibe. I do laugh too, going back to when I was going to the karaoke because, when I had got on a train going up there, I remember just happening to look around. Sometimes you just look at who's on the train. And one of the same people that was on the train ended up being at that party that night. They
You
didn't go to
never know.
karaoke,
Mhm.
right? But they ended up being at that party that night. And I remember afterwards, kind of having a conversation with them. I think before I left, I think I might have went outside to take a phone call or something and talking to them, and they were just talking about all the different parties. And I remember saying to myself, like, oh, I should connect with them, just to see, like, what else they know or, have going on, so on and so forth. I think another thing I want to kind of make clear too, before we kind of go is that this is open to all orientations as well. Because I think another thing that people think is that you have to be, you know, excuse me, that was real. Yeah, I think the camera might have heard that. I don't know. That was an indigestion, burp that came up. That silent reflux is a killer. But anyhow, I think people, would assume that it's, only like same sex loving or affectionate with or whatever, but it's open more so to any and everybody. And like you said, it's one of those things where just because you're in a space doesn't mean that you can touch, that you can assume that a person goes whatever way. But that's where the consent is key, kind of, comes into
And a
play.
lot of kink also isn't sexual, so you do not have to be
I think you remember
touching
that.
genitals or touching or even be into, maybe you want to play with another man, but it doesn't have to be a sexual play. Or if you want to play with another woman, or if you're a queer woman and you want to play with a man, it's not, you can explore other things without actually being into those people. Like, I'm not sexually romantic with a man, but maybe I want to play with a man in a certain way, but I'm not touching his genitals or anything like that. Like, those are off limits. Um, but then that's okay. So you can still, it's very expansive. You can do whatever you like.
All right now.
Like take something off the table, put something back.
So when you say that it doesn't have to be, so what are those things? Because you said it doesn't have to be physical. So what are some things that can take place where, like you said, even, same gender on same gender or opposite, whatever, where it's like you said, where you can play with, but you're not like, what do you mean by that?
Role playing, people pet play, boot worship. Those are things that are not sexual, but even impact is not sexual. I can be hitting you on your back, and that's just an enjoyment because you like the cathartic release, and I like giving it. But there's no sexual energy between the two of us. It's just a power exchange. Mental
That's just
some people
so
degradation,
you said some people what?
degradation and humiliation. So I'm yelling, or maybe you're a human chair. I've seen people play spades on somebody that they're just a table. Doesn't matter who's around the table playing spades. You do care. The table doesn't have a gender. We don't care if you're a man or woman. You're just a table for right now, and that's their kink, and they're getting off on that. Not off, but that there's
Right, right,
some
right.
type of enjoyment. It doesn't have to be a sexual enjoyment, but some kind of gratification.
Gotcha. Okay, and that can be, spades is a very, competitive game. So they can be
Yeah.
arguing, what you mean? I
Yeah.
had three books, that somebody, who,
And then it also can be
renege.
sexual for people too. So like we don't want to take away from that being some, like, it's because it may not be sexual for one person, it may be sexual. And those are the things that when you're negotiating, you have to ask, like, is this seem sexual for you? Like, maybe it's not for me, but it doesn't matter if it's sexual for you, it is not for me. So it's a lot
Gotcha.
into just asking, help.
Sure. And even I guess even like in a cuck sort of a situation where maybe it is a verbal thing, where, I can't handle, my wife or whatever, you can go, and that's just a verbal thing. So definitely get that. It was something else I was gonna say too. I forget it. I want to say it's not important, but no, definitely makes sense. So I go into if a person were interested and wanted to get into kink or BDSM, that sort of a thing. How should they go about like researching this, looking into this, that sort of a thing?
Researching it, looking into yourself, learn, like, why do you want to do these things? Go to a munch, actually meet people in person. Ask
And
questions.
what is a munch?
The munch is the
Not Ice
gathering.
Spice. Go ahead.
A munch is a gathering for kink folk. and BDSM folks, they come together in vanilla spaces. So like they would meet at a bar or a restaurant, somewhere that's not a kink place, somewhere where you have all your clothes on, somewhere where you don't have fetishes. You meet a person as a human before you meet their kinks. So learning these
Mm,
things, asking questions, asking about the events that you want to go to. Take
mm,
somebody with you. Do not go by yourself. Like, sir. And then have somebody who also knows your limits, because if you get into a space where you probably be like, it's a kid in the candy store, I'm gonna try everything. But everything ain't safe. And
mm,
take your time. Like you said, go around, just look, see how people behave. And see
mm,
them more than one time, because you can see a person who's very charismatic and very outgoing, and they may not have the best intentions for you. So
mm.
the person a couple times
Gotcha.
before you decide if you want to engage with them in that way, and then ask. It is okay to ask, who was you last with? This is a place
Mm,
where it is okay. In kink, something like, oh, asking about somebody's ex, or ex, or wanting to know who they are. This is the space to ask. I need to talk to the last five doms and see why you left. Like, what happened? I need somebody
mm.
to tell me something about you. Oh, you have four
Okay.
submissives, they all left. Why you don't got none now? Okay, can I
Mm.
three of them at least?
And they will allow people to
Yes.
speak to.
And if they don't, then that's a red flag there. Why? Because things don't work for people sometimes, and it's okay.
Mm.
But now I want to know, was you abusive? Was you coercive? Were you, holding finances? Were you not telling information? So these are things that you only know from actually asking people who know the person.
Okay.
Everybody, you're gonna put your representative forward. This ain't. You don't want to put your life in somebody's representative's hands.
Mm, mm. It's funny how even, we won't get political, but yeah, okay. And I'll say too, I think another piece of that is being open to what you may see and being respectful of it. I'll give a
Yes.
little brief. That last event that I went to, I remember they had a raffle, and I typically never win raffles. And just so happened that night I won a raffle. So they call my number, I hold up, I've got my ticket, and it's like a dark bar or a dark scene or whatever. And I just so happened to look over, and like you said, pet play. Someone had the black, like, dog or wolf mask on. So I see these
Mhm.
people looking to see like who won. And I just happen to look, and I'm like, this dog, this human dog is just looking at me. And, I was like, oh, in my head, like, what the? But I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. We're in this space. It was the first time I ever saw it. There's no disrespect to the person. It just caught me off guard, and especially just looking, uh, you know, Grover, like, please don't look, like, just,
Yeah.
my
I love
my
me some
past
puppies.
trauma. You said what?
Well, I love me some puppies. It just makes
Yeah,
me giggle. Some, I don't know.
yeah,
It's something silly, and I just like people. I love role play, so if you could really get into that character, and I'll be like, oh, look at this
yeah.
go.
I hear you. I hear you. I
But
say
yeah, the thing is,
you
this,
love,
when you see something that's not for you, instead of yucking it, like, that's not my kink. It's not for me.
yeah. And I won't say that it definitely it's no disrespect to the person. It was just like it just caught me off guard. I'm pretty sure for them, I could see the benefits of it. Once again, you can work your 9 to 5 or whatever it may be, and you can put that on, and you can become your alter ego. Have a great time. That sort of a thing. So definitely makes sense. So yeah, I won't hold up too much of your time. I'll just say thank you for one. Hopefully people can, they've learned a thing or two. Hopefully they don't chop me up and be like, you forgot this, you forgot to ask that,
We
shut up.
forgot a lot of stuff. It's okay, but I can come back with some things in my head. I was like, we should have talked, but I'm like, it's fine. We said we
Like
need.
what?
I don't know.
Ah,
I
you
do.
forgot.
But I'm old. My short-term memory sucks.
I'm curious, like what are some of those things that could have been spoken about? However, yeah, it doesn't have to be the last. If anything, we'll just kind of make more mental notes. I feel like the questions that I have, I didn't have that many, and I felt like, maybe more would come from, just straight dialogue. But because, usually when it's like a conversation, you know, um, they just kind of flow, and the questions are answered more so on their own. But yeah, thank you. And I'll say this, and you so don't have to, but if anybody were, of the one subscriber that I have, people need to subscribe more, but and to watch this and engage and all that other good stuff. But for those who would be interested in either like, seeking like your knowledge or some of your services or attending an event or learning more, is there like any way or space, where they can like contact you, or like how does that work?
Absolutely. For me personally, like, because I said consent is my jam, and I love talking about consent in all different areas from sexual health to kink. So it is the consent queen at gmail.com, or I am Mrs. D on Instagram, and we talk about all things related to consent, kink, and BDSM.
Gotcha. And for those, now, um, spell it out for those. So you said the Instagram is what?
IAMMRSDEE.
And if I had to, you
I
know what?
am Mrs. D.
No, no, no. I was gonna say maybe I need to see if I have like I may have like the.
The thing that could come up on the thing.
Yeah, I can't even think of the word, but the technology type skills, technological kind of skills, whatever word I'm looking for. Te technological, is that even a word? I don't know. So,
Well, now I say I make up
there we
words.
go. Hey,
I'll work on it.
fantabulous. But and if you said spell out the email for them.
Oh, the THE consent, CONSENT, queen, QUE, QUEEN, Lord.com.
Gotcha. Not Lord.
Don't put the Lord in there.
You're right.
Keep the Lord everywhere, but don't put him in my email.
Right, right, right. All
Lord.
right. So you gave me the email, you gave me the IG, and I think you said one more other thing because I just wanted if they want to. Oh, was that it? I thought you
Yeah,
gave
that's
three.
it. Either one of those.
That's right.
My
Okay.
Linktree and everything else is there. You can find and branch out for everything else.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, as always, thank you very much for taking the time out to make this happen. Yeah. Um, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It
All
was
right.
fun.
All right.
I'll talk
Have
to
a
you
good one. Yeah,
later.
right, 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 right. Bye-bye. And I just want to thank everybody that, was able to tune in to this segment, this show. Hopefully you enjoy it. Sometimes I hate these rings because then it just looks like I have like, one eyeball, a little Jack Thriller thing going on. But nonetheless, it's not a diss. Well, I don't want nobody, just whatever. Um, but yeah, if you're able to, the wherever you found this at, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, feel free to subscribe, feel free to ask questions, feel free to comment, feel free to share. There is more to come if you have more questions, all that other good stuff, and some would say, well, why did you want to talk about that? It's out there. Why not? It's a space. It's something that takes place. It's an experience that I had. Yeah, and I'm all about educating, entertaining, getting people to learn, so on and so forth. So as always, as I'm trying to get this, light, out of my, yeah, maybe I'll get that cue that person told me to get in due time. Beard just all over the place. Anyhow, thank y'all so much as always for tuning in. There's definitely more to come. You all have a good night. And it's March Madness. Happy St. Patrick's Day, all that good stuff. Y'all take care.